Oh my god! Oh, it's so ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
It is time for even more Switch 2 coverage. We had the opportunity not just to play brand new Nintendo Switch 2 games, but Switch 2 edition games. And Brandon, your prediction was exactly on the money when they first used this terminology, wasn't it?
Yeah, I am surprised at how many people thought I was off base, because I thought it was pretty self-explanatory, and it turns out it was. This is exactly what it is.
Yeah, basically, if you haven't heard yet, Switch 2 edition games are just Switch 1 games with Switch 2 enhancements. Now,
Well, it goes a little further than that, too.
Yeah, some of them have new DLC, new modes, improved graphics, improved frame rates. Switch 2 edition turns out mean a lot of things, but at its core, it's always a Switch 1 game with some layer of Switch 2 added to it.
Yeah.
And all of these, well, not all of these we found out. Most of these come with an additional cost. Some of them won't, depending on the level of complexity.
Switch 2 edition games will cost an upgrade, but there are other games that won't have that moniker that will get free upgrades. Something like Super Mario Odyssey, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, ARMS for some reason.
Yeah, ARMS is a really weird one. The other ones on that list all seem to have some type of performance where they could benefit from additional horsepower, right? Like Super Mario Odyssey and the resolution, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet for the reasons people yelled about. But let's talk about the games we did play.
Yeah.
We got to get our hands on Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom Switch 2 editions. Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, which we have a whole other video on. So check that. We did an entire discussion on Metroid Prime. We got our hands on Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom Nintendo Switch 2 edition, Super Mario Party Jamboree Nintendo Switch 2 edition plus Jamboree TV, and Kirby and the Forgotten Land plus Shattered
World?
Shattered World. Let's
Shattered
say,
something.
Should comment if we're wrong. We're probably wrong. Of course, we also did go hands-on with Metroid Prime 4 Beyond Nintendo Switch 2 edition, but that is its own separate video that is live as of the posting of this one. Please feel free to go watch that for an in-depth discussion on everything Metroid. But I want to start with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, because for me, at least, Brandon, this was the oh wow moment of the entire experience. This was the thing that communicated to me the best just how much more powerful Switch 2 is than Switch 1.
It was kind of incredible, because like you played Breath of the Wild first before I got to play Tears of the Kingdom, and I was setting up the camera for you, so I was like a distance away, and you were starting in handheld mode, so I didn't have like a perfect viewing angle of what you were doing, but just like even from where I was, it was immediate. The 60 FPS, the buttery smooth frame rate hit me instantly, and I was like, that's different.
It was a night and day difference. The improvements to Breath of the Wild are everywhere. And I very specifically set out to ruin my experience with this. So for some context, the handheld portion of the demo was extremely short. We literally got to just run out onto the Great Plateau, and we have footage of this, and maybe on Patreon or something I'll post the actual raw audio of Brandon and I squealing when we saw it, just 60 FPS running out, draw distance going crazy. Like, I was losing my mind at this, because this was one of the most iconic moments for me in all of gaming, just better in every imaginable way. Like, zero drawbacks, better color, better draw distance, better graphics, higher resolution, higher frame rate, and in a portable that was still, not unimaginably bigger than what we have today. Same thickness, just bigger screen. It was breathtaking, like in the same way that it was in 2017 when I first saw it. I was just taken, like my breath was taken away all over again. It
was a magical moment, and seeing the HDR too, when you were when you were stepping out onto the Great Plateau for the first time, and just the colors and the depth of the color. Just, it popped so much. It made Breath of the Wild feel like a brand new game.
Yeah, it's really not an understatement. When you see this and you play it, it is like you're playing a next gen game. It feels again the same way, just as impossible as Breath of the Wild did when it came out on the Switch. And when we moved to the TV mode section, Brandon and I went immediately into stress test mode. Like, we decided we were just going to try to make this game drop a frame, slow down, be worse somehow. Like, if for any other reason than to ground me back in reality. So the first thing we did was we loaded up a save. We noticed that there was just most of the map unlocked for us to mess with. This was like a completed save. And I warped to Hyrule Castle just to see it, and I was looking at it and just the particle effects in the air. Like, it's not a remaster, it's not a remake, it's still got the 2017 visuals, just at a higher resolution. But you know, it just looks so much clearer, so much prettier because it's running much higher res. I don't know if it was 4K or 1440p, but it was clearly above 1080 in docked mode.
Yeah, it was sharper than I've ever seen that game before.
Yeah, it was the stuff of dreams. Like, there, you know, people would want to, you know, this is something that just wasn't possible on the previous generation of the Switch.
Yeah.
But Brandon had the idea, you know, while we were just sitting there thinking about what best to do, Brandon shouted out to me. He's like, "Go to the Sacred Forest." And so this was mind-blowing in two respects, because we warped there. And that was quick.
Seconds.
It took maybe 25% of the time it takes on Switch 1. It was fast. And once we got there, just 0 frame hiccups. Nothing. And I mean, I ran up to the Master Sword pedestal and ran circles around and spun the camera every which direction, trying to get the game to just freeze a little.
Going to the Korok Forest is not walking through mud anymore.
Yeah, it is glorious how clean it was. And then I did what any unhinged person would do, warped back to the castle and tried to pick a fight with Ganon before my time ran out. And I nearly got there. We got to see him get his life bar taken down about half by all the guardians, and then that was it. We were out of time. But then you moved on to arguably an even more impressive demo in Tears of the Kingdom.
Tears of the Kingdom, it's the same exact deal. The same faster load times, the same crispy HD visuals, and the same buttery smooth 60 FPS. It's like like I said before with Breath of the Wild, it's like playing a brand new game. Like, I'm going to replay these games because of this. Like, it's that impressive.
It is no exaggeration to say that these are just they feel like, you know, a full remaster, not just a performance patch. They feel like Nintendo went back and remade these games.
We got Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom HD before Wind Waker and Twilight Princess.
We sure did. But yeah, this one is just the same. We launched up into the sky, dove down into the depths as fast as we could.
No hiccups. It didn't stop.
Yeah, no hiccups, no pause, nothing.
You just hit the ground and you just kind of stopped, and I was like, "Wait, we're down here already?"
Yeah, we were just there. You know, we tried out all the abilities that we could. Nothing made the Switch 2 skip a beat. So super impressive. We didn't get to try out Zelda notes or anything like that because obviously we don't have the new Nintendo Switch app. They didn't have it available for demo, but what we did see was super impressive. But realistically, outside of horsepower, the Zelda games didn't use really any of the Switch 2's new tricks.
No.
You know, they had HDR. I'm sure they have VRR support, but they didn't use any of the like quirky new stuff. My favorite of the Switch 2 editions in terms of just making use of the actual Switch 2 components was Super Mario Party Jamboree and Jamboree TV. This was unexpectedly great.
First of all, thank you, Nintendo, for finally updating a Mario Party post-launch with new content. But there was two like elements to this experience, right? First, we had a selection of mouse-controlled mini games, and they honestly really shocked me. They're super fun, super responsive. There was one where we had like these little toy cars, you know, the ones you'd have as a kid. You pull it back and then it would ride off. Literally that exact concept. You'd pull it back by sliding the Joy-Con backwards. You'd feel the tension in the Joy-Con because of the HD Rumble 2, which felt incredible, by the way. And then you'd let go, and it was basically a game of joust. You had, you know, it was 2 players on one side, 2 players on the other, and you had to get your toy car into the other player's goal to score a point. And that was like a wow factor moment for me.
Yeah, that game in particular blew my mind. It really is. You can't understate you can't overstate how impressive HD Rumble 2 is in that specific game in Mario Party Jamboree, because, you know, I haven't pulled a toy car back in years and years at this point, but everybody remembers that feeling of like tension in the wheels, and just how a Joy-Con can do that is beyond me, but it does, and it feels very realistic. But more importantly, that game was just straight up fun.
It was super fun.
It was ridiculous. Like, so to set the stage, you have 2 home bases, like soccer goals, and then in between you have an intentionally much more narrow strip of like highway, and you have to drive into the other player's goal with your toy car. But of course, they can always hit you and knock you off. But of course, that comes at the cost of them then having to shake their Joy-Con to get their car back upright, or they fall in the water and Lakitu has to pick them up, and then they start back at their own goal. And I mean, we were playing against two Nintendo demo folks, and you know, we were just hollering at each other, like having fun, like laughing hysterically at all this. And that was just one of many games. It was my favorite, but all of them, in my opinion, were really good.
There was we did the mail sorting one, which was just like comical, like in its whole setup. Like Toad is at his computer using his Joy-Con as a mouse, by the way, which you pointed out. And we're sorting the emails to go into the folder, and then the Bowser mail into the spam folder.
Yeah, and then eventually love letters into a love folder, like little heart folder.
Yeah, that one was super fun. That was a frame like a photo finish between the two teams there on that one, which really kind of set the stage for the rest of that competition. But there was the block stacking one is where some of the other features of the Joy-Con mouse mode, when that started to like settle in for me, because not only do you have the mouse function of, you know, just putting your pointer somewhere on screen, but you also had the gyro element of twisting your cursor.
Right. We were trying to so the goal of that game is you need to stack. It's called Stuffy Stack, I think, and you stack these plushies, and whoever gets the tallest stack at the end wins. And they don't just throw like, I mean, they do have some like Tetris style blocks, but mostly it's like stars and Yoshis and mushrooms, stuff that doesn't stack.
Yeah.
And so you do have to get creative with like how you angle them. At one point, Brandon and I had like 2 or 3 Yoshis laying on top of each other,
like wedged
on a pile of blocks that were way too high, which all came crashing down for us at the very end, because when the game ends, they make you wait 3 seconds to see if it's actually stable, which ours wasn't. But it's impressive to see just how nuanced you can get with the rotation, thanks to the gyroscope in the Joy-Con, and just how well that works in conjunction with mouse mode, because it truly feels like a 3-dimensional mouse.
Yeah, it's like an evolution of the Wii pointer, which had a similar functionality. Not only could you point at the screen, but you could change the rotation of the way you were pointing. Like, this game could theoretically be done like with gyro, or as an old Wii game, but there was a nuance to the control that we had, like a level of control that we had that isn't possible with those control schemes.
Yeah, it feels much more fine.
Yeah,
and that is something that I'm not used to, that level of precision, quite frankly, in console gaming at all.
Yeah, for sure. Me neither. These 6 particular mini games felt really well curated and well designed around mouse function. We had another one where there was bob-ombs and the 2 teams had different colors of spray paint, and we had to shake the cans to reload them and then use our mouses to spray the bob-ombs with our color. It was basically a game of Splatoon at the expense of the livelihoods of a couple bob-ombs. And then at the last round, it ends with a couple bob-ombs and king bob-ombs. So like we're all like fighting to get territory on this massive unit of a man.
Yeah, and it was so funny because I noticed at the very end that everybody was ignoring the 2 smaller bob-ombs that came with king bob-omb, and so I was just painting them real quick, and then I'd paint king bob-omb's feet. and we again, another very close match. We ended up pulling that one out, but the one that impressed me the most was the one I was the worst at. And I don't remember the name of it, but it was an electrified maze, and you had to use the mouse to carry a toad with realistic physics all the way through the maze. And you pulled off this stunning maneuver in which there was a long vertical section, and you just dropped him and then zipped down to where he was going to be and caught him again. Yeah. And that was so impressive. Even the Nintendo folks were applauding you on that one.
One of the staffers, I kind of blew his mind because he had not seen that during the day, but it was just one of those moments where like the design is so well thought out that like that was made possible, right? Like, so I intuited that like, hey, I could drop him and probably go down and catch him, and the game allowed me to do that.
Yeah, I have to say that Nintendo did a really great job with mouse mode in this. What was more impressive to me though was from a technical standpoint, not necessarily a gameplay standpoint, was the introduction of the switch to webcam and the Bowser's live mode and how all of that worked. Because it just the way you said it in a conversation right after was so apt. It just works.
Yeah.
It's when we walked up to the demo, all we had to do was walk up to the demo.
I mean, let's put this in perspective, right? Like, this is Kinect. This is what Kinect could have been. Kinect didn't work, right?
Right.
This just worked.
Yeah, this was, you didn't have to, T-pose or take a scan of a room or do anything of the sort. You just had to stand, it shows a box on the TV, and it shows where you are in relation to said box, and you just got to make sure that you're in that box, and then it just tells you like, okay, I've got you, I've figured this out, and
it keys you out in real time.
Yeah, it removes the background from behind you. We were in like far from ideal lighting conditions.
Right.
It was pretty dim. We were against a red wall. Like it was not. I would have been fine with it not working right, but it worked perfectly. And what's really important about this, it worked perfectly on a $50 webcam. Like it's not like the Switch 2 webcam is some fancy piece of tech with loads of sensors. It's not like your iPhone or something like that.
It's a lens on a stick.
Yeah, exactly. It's a deeply unimpressive camera from a strictly like nuts and bolts standpoint. But what they've managed to do with the software is just remarkable and honestly very fun. Because Bowser, starts a concert and he's on stage and he picks you out of the crowd and these warp pipes come out and you actually come out of the warp pipe. Just your little like 2D image comes out, and I mean it's cheesy but like in the right way.
This is a game you play with like really close friends where you can just get completely shameless with, right?
Yeah.
This is the evolution of like WarioWare smooth moves.
It really is. So we played a trio of mini games here.
Yeah.
One in which we had to actually with our hands punch a coin block and get as many coins as we can. There was one in which we, oh boy, I'm not remembering the second game. I remember the third one.
The squatting one.
Right. We had to squat. Well, we had to do kind of a Simon Says, in which they would say it was a wonder flower, like a talking flower from Wonder, and it would tell us, each team had a Mario and a Luigi, and it would say like, Mario, don't squat. and so you'd have to stand, or it'd say, Luigi, don't stand, and you'd have to squat, right? It would try to trip you up with commands, and it would delay saying them. So it was very interesting to do that. Then we had the coin block punch, but my favorite one had to be the final one, in which you just had to scream like as loud as you can at your Switch. So through this was one of the last demos we played overall at the show, and we heard people hollering and screaming, and I thought it was just people popping off, being very excited about whatever was going on. And we finally had our turn at the demo, and Brandon and I went Super Saiyan in that booth.
We went feral.
And I realized that suddenly we were the ones causing concern for everyone around us. But this was what the game wants, and so it was fun. I'm surprised I'm still able to speak because I wanted to win, and so I projected. But it was definitely it was a side of Mario Party that I've never seen. And I was really impressed with just how much Switch 2 tech they crammed into this particular Nintendo Switch 2 edition.
People are gonna look at this and they're gonna just like say to themselves, "Oh, this is gimmicky. Oh, this is silly." It's really not. Like, what's happening here is legitimately impressive.
Yeah, they've really gone the extra mile, particularly with Mario Party, to make it feel like like a Switch 2 game. Now, of course, there is one more Nintendo Switch 2 edition that we played, and that was Kirby and the Forgotten Land. And I did not play nearly as much of this one as you did, Brandon. So why don't you take us through it?
So Kirby and the Forgotten Land actually is getting an entirely new mode, much in the same way as Super Mario Party Jamboree. But for those who have played a lot of Kirby games, especially a lot of modern ones, typically after you beat like the main campaign, you unlock a second campaign, which remixes a bunch of levels from the original one into like a harder like setup. And that's essentially what's happening here. But there's like this extra element of these like crystals that show up in the world that weren't there before. Some enemies have crystals on them and they're harder to beat than usual. But at its core, it was the first level of Kirby and the Forgotten Land again, just remixed. And I'm fine with that because they've done that before. There's precedent for it. I know at the end there will be a big payoff and some crazy Eldritch Horror boss fight that's going to happen. So I'm excited for that. But the main thing that kind of surprised me, again, like same with Zelda, was just the frame rate.
Yeah, it was again super smooth, looked great. I definitely knew that I was playing the first level of Kirby and the Forgotten Land, and I knew that the crystals were different. And I was hoping to see a bit more, but obviously I got to it right near the end of the entire event.
Really and I guess I should mention this too, like there was a new mouthful mode item. It was a spring.
Yes, I did use that.
And the spring is the majority of the level. You spend most of it in the spring mode. And it's way longer than you might think it is. So that might tell us what the rest of the adventure is going to be like. Maybe it's more mouthful mode than not mouthful mode. Because another thing I noticed is there weren't new copy abilities. The only copy abilities that were in the level were the ones that I've played in the original version of the game. So if they want to double down on mouthful mode, I think that's great. But again, it's just that 60 FPS. That's a 30 FPS game. That looks great in 30 FPS, but it looks incredible in 60 FPS.
Yeah, Nintendo, I think, is doing the right thing here with creating these Nintendo Switch 2 edition games, because I think it is an easy way, like a very easy way to show just how much more powerful Switch 2 is. Because I think when you look at some of the third-party games that I saw that I found impressive, Cyberpunk was very impressive to see on the Switch at all, but people who don't really grasp technology that way might not understand what's so cool about seeing a game like Cyberpunk on the Switch 2. But if they see a game that they know and they've played, and it just obviously runs smoother and looks better, that's an easy way to be like, oh, this thing is way better than what I have. But I'm excited to see what Nintendo does in the future with these. This is a great first crop of titles. I just wish we had release dates for all of them. I know that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are day one. I can't remember about Super Mario Party.
Super Mario Party is not day one.
Right, it's
late
in July.
Late July, yeah.
Late July, and then
Kirby is late August.
So Nintendo seems to maybe be using these to keep their calendar full.
Yeah.
Like with, so that maybe if there aren't too many Switch 2 games coming out, you can download these Nintendo Switch 2 edition games. But final thoughts. What is your take after having played 5 Nintendo Switch 2 edition games?
I want to play them on Switch 2 rather than Switch 1. Just that's how I feel. I do think the value proposition maybe on the Zelda games is a little skewed. I'll need to dig more into Zelda notes and feel out how substantial that actually is going to be, because having a notes app for that game that lets you interact with that world in a different way, a little more thorough, that feels like something that would have been better spent when the games first came out.
I agree,
because this is a Hyrule I've gone now through twice.
Yeah, the one thing I do like is the kind of Korok GPS. I never found every Korok. I just did not want to expend that effort.
Me neither.
I might be willing to revisit that through the lens of just seeing Hyrule in a much more beautiful state, and getting to kind of enjoy that 60 FPS presentation of it. It would give me a good reason to explore Hyrule again, to find all of them. But I'm with you in that I feel like a second screen experience for an 8-year-old game is a hard sell for me. I would have much rather, the title been maybe a bit cheaper and just had these frame rate and visual enhancements, because I don't know that I need a companion app.
It really, to me, it just comes down to price. We've seen Japanese pricing for these upgrade packs, and if it's the same in the US, which I don't think we have those prices yet, we're looking at games that are just like performant upgrades are $10, and games that are performant upgrades with new features are $20. We don't know if that will be reflective in US pricing, but if that is how it works, I think that's fine.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think that as long as it stays within those confines, that's pretty similar to what other people are doing. And so,
I'll gladly spend $20 to upgrade both Zeldas.
Yeah, exactly. So it'll be interesting to see, but that's going to do it for us with Switch 2 editions. Yeah, we still got a lot more to discuss, a lot more Switch 2 stuff that we've played. We haven't even begun talking third parties yet. So stay tuned to GVG for much more on Nintendo Switch 2. Make sure to subscribe to get all of our videos just as soon as they drop. We are going to be talking a lot more about Nintendo's latest offering as we make the run up to the release of it on June 5th. If you want to get involved and support us, you can head over to patreon.com/gvgaming to find out how. Thanks as always for watching, for listening, wherever you are, and we'll see you next time. Until then, bye.
See ya.